Good morning. I'd like to open today's meeting. I welcome everyone in the gallery and joining us via the live stream. I invite you all to stand now as Councillor Law acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today.
Good morning, through you, Madam Mayor. I wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Kabi Kabi and Yinabara peoples, who have cared for and nurtured this land for millennia, and who have shown us the way and continue to reach out to us so that we can see the way forward of how to care for, nurture and live on country. I pay respect to all traditional owners, to their elders and to the future elders, so that together we can have a wonderful place and a wonderful country to live on, to work together, to play together and to be families together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. If you're able, please remain standing as I invite Reverend Tanya Eichler from St Peter's Anglican Church, Maroochydore, to provide a blessing.
Thank you and good morning. Gracious and loving Creator, we give thanks for this day and for the opportunity to gather in service of the Sunshine Coast communities. Bless those who sit in this chamber entrusted with leadership and responsibility. Grant them wisdom in their deliberations, vision for the future, and care for the people they serve. Give their words and decisions that they may build not only roads, bridges and infrastructure, but also trust, well-being, hope and guardianship of all lands. Bless this council with unity of purpose, with courage to make hard choices and with compassion to lift up the most vulnerable. May all that is done here contribute to a flourishing and connected community. We ask this through the Creator's name. Amen.
Thank you. Please remain upstanding as we acknowledge the recent passing of former Councillor Frank Goritz, who served from 1980 to 1991 on both the Landsborough, Shire and Caloundra City Councils. Councillor Johnston, would you like to say a few words to acknowledge the former councillor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, councillors and all those online as well as in the gallery. Today, I wish to pay tribute to an incredibly kind, decent and much admired man who recently passed away at the age of 96. Francis Raymond Gerritts, or Frank as everybody called him, was born in 1929. He was the middle child of a big family, 13 children. Frank and his wife Kit had 3 children, Nick, Janet, Scott. Unfortunately, Kit passed away when he was in his early 40s. Frank was always active in his community, and some of his activities included, but there was a lot of others. He was in Apex, becoming a life member. He was a Show Society member, Masonic Lodge, Uniting Church. He was an ambulance bearer, mailman, and occasional school bus driver, as well as a farmer. However, his real passion was bowling, so much so that he represented his club, district, and also state as an accomplished lawn bowler. In 1980, he was appointed as a councillor to Landsborough Shire Council, replacing long-serving councillor Dave Hankinson. In 1982, I joined Frank as a fellow Division 2 councillor representing Landsborough and Maloney, hence the reason why I'm delivering this today. During the next 9 years, we achieved together a long list of town and district improvements. Frank always encouraged me and strongly supported me. We're a great team, working in harmony to improve our communities. Some of the achievements that were the searing of Maloney Township, installing almost all of the curb, channelling and drainage in both townships, sealing and widening many roads and streets, constructing new streets in Maloney, improving rubbish tips for both towns, purchasing and developing the car park facilities in Maloney, purchasing additional land from Maloney showgrounds and greatly improving the constructing facilities at those grounds. We installed water meters in both towns before any other part of the council deemed it necessary. We upgraded and developed parks and sporting facilities for both towns, as well as the successful removal, something I'm very proud of groundsel weed from the entire district. Never once did we have a disagreement because we always supported each other. After 1991, when Frank went into retirement, he married again and he and Rose moved to Golden Beach. Frankly was what I called him. Frank stayed active right up till his last months, mowing his lawn, maintaining his home and playing lawn bowls. In fact, during the approach of Cyclone Albert, Frank climbed a ladder to inspect and clean the gutters of his home, to the amazement and angst of many people. Frank Gerrits was an outstanding individual in so many ways, a loving husband, father and grandparent. He was a great community worker, council alderman for both Landsborough Shire and Caloundra cities. Frank was also a wonderful friend and neighbour to many. He will be greatly missed by family, friends, neighbours and his lawn bowling club members. However, I'm sure that everyone who knew him will always recall his great sense of humour and his infectious laugh. Vale Francis Raymond Gerrits, a valuable and much cherished individual right up to his passing at age 96. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Thank you, everyone. Please take your seats. Record of attendance noting we are all present in the chamber, so moving to item 4. Councillors, would someone please move receipt and confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting from 21 August? Moved Councillor Johnston, seconded Councillor Dixon. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. There's no mayoral minute today, so item 6. Councillors, I remind you of the requirements of the Local Government Act of 2009, which sets out how councillors' conflicts of interest are managed for local government matters. These requirements apply to how we deal with such matters at this meeting. Should you have a conflict of interest in relation to an agenda item, please raise it at the commencement of that item. Councillors, we have a procedural motion to introduce a new item of business today. Would someone please move the motion on screen to include confidential item 11.2 on today's agenda? Councillor Suarez and seconded Councillor Burns. Thank you. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We will consider the item at 11.2, last on the agenda today. Item 7, there are no presentations today, so we move on to item 8.1, and we welcome Ms Patterson to present the Community Partnership Funding Program recommendations for 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Mayor, Chair and councillors. My name is Cheryl Patterson and I am the Community Connections and Partnerships Lead. And this report seeks council consideration and approval of the 2025 Community Partnership Funding Program recommendations. This slide here demonstrates all of council's funding programs for the 2025-2026 financial year. Each program is designed with purpose and each acting as a strategic investment in the future of our region. These programs are more than just funding, they're a partnership. By supporting a wide range of community-led projects, events, services and facilities, council is working hand in hand with our community to bring ideas to life and to celebrate contributions of our volunteers. In 2024-2025 financial year alone, council awarded 1,152 grants, injecting over $5.6 million directly into our community. I invite you to consider the real impact, the real outcomes and the real stories of change this funding can achieve. I'd like to highlight one of the groups proposed to be funded in the current partnership program, the Sunshine Coast Contract Bridge Club at Buderim. This group is a powerhouse of positive ageing and dementia prevention. They have 400 members, including 65 of those in their 90s. The Sunshine Coast Contract Bridge Club is a vital hub of social connection and operates 41 hours across 6 days a week, supported by 54 volunteers, and the club runs on a modest budget, delivering a big impact for older people. Council's proposed contribution is only 3% towards their overall operating costs, or for every dollar Council invests, the organisation invests $29.30, demonstrating strategic community investment. Today, we are focused on the Community Partnership Funding Program, which was established in 2010 to provide some certainty to community groups by granting 3 years of funding to contribute to operational expenses, the most difficult type of funding to secure externally. It's open to well-established not-for-profit for community organisations that provide facilities or services which support the delivery of Council's priorities and demonstrate broad community benefit. A review of the program undertaken last year identified that the Community Partnership Program is achieving its purpose and delivering outcomes in line with Council's corporate priorities and strengthens connection between Council and the community. The current 3-year cycle of the program commenced last financial year in 24-25 with 141 organisations awarded multiple year funding and over just $1.15 million. It was determined that a maximum of 2 years of funding be allocated this year to bring new allocations into line with existing agreements which end on the 30th of June 2027. This program powers the backbone of our community by helping the essential everyday costs that keep community groups running. We're talking about things that aren't always exciting but are absolutely critical. Things like insurance, electricity, water, waste management, rents and more. These are the costs that keep the lights on. By contributing to these operational expenses, Council is giving community groups something incredibly valuable, certainty. Certainty that allows them to stop worrying about bills and focus on what really matters, delivering meaningful programs, services and activities that enrich the lives of their members and the wider community. It's about enabling to do what they do best, service delivery, connecting others and maintaining community spaces. This year, in 2025, we promoted the program directly to potential partners through internal networks, starting with an expression of interest to save time for those not aligned with the priorities of the program. This step also allowed Council officers representing the various categories to assist applicants in proposal development and negotiate a partnership deliverables and measures. It also provided the opportunity to manage expectations regarding potential funding amounts available within the program budget. At the close of application period, Council received a total of 9 applications, requesting $92,500 in funding. Assessment outcomes. Assessment of applications was based on general program and category-specific assessment criteria and comprised of 3 stages. Stage 1, a pre-assessment by grants officers to determine applicant and proposal eligibility. Step 2, proposal assessments by a panel made up of Council officer category experts and grants officers. And step 3, strategic assessment by the relevant branch managers. This report today recommends a total of $68,275 per year to allow 8 groups to join the program for the next 2 years and 1 group for a 1-year period. Details of the recommended outcomes are included in Appendix A. This year, no applications were received for cultural, heritage or economic development categories just for 2025. The 25-26 Community Partnership Program budget is sufficient to support the 9 new partnerships. As this is a multi-year program, there are also implications for the program's 26-27 budget, and this table provides the details. Program outcomes. Let's talk about impact, the meaningful contributions that shape and strengthen our community in ways that may not always be quantifiable, but are felt deeply by our community. With just $68,275 in funding, 9 community organisations will be empowered to support over 2,000 registered members, 325 volunteers, and deliver more than 300 hours of service every single week. That's incredible value. An example of this is Coolum District Netball Association, to continue to keep their 1,300 members healthy, active and competitive, and this program will allow that. It will help them offer a range of programs to all ages and abilities, all contributing to a fabric of a strong and connected community. But it doesn't stop there. When we look at the broader picture, adding in the support already provided through the existing 2024-25 partnerships, this program is now helping to power 46,730 registered members, over 10,000 volunteers and over 11,000 hours of operation every week. That's just not numbers on a page, that's thousands of lives being touched, communities being strengthened and volunteers being supported to do what they do best. This is what strategic investment in community looks like, and this is how we build a stronger, more connected region in partnership. And finally, we seek council endorsement of the Office for recommendations in the Community Partnership Funding Program to support our key community organisations. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillors, can I have a mover for this item, Councillor Bunnag, and a seconder, Councillor Law? Councillor Bunnag.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good morning, everyone. And it's just so wonderful to see the work that our community is doing. And thank you very much for your presentation, Ms. Patterson. I reflect on the CEO's ambition for the council to become a community-powered organisation. It's to reflect the fact that the Sunshine Coast is a community-powered region. And you only have to look at the raw figures to actually see that demonstrated. The contribution that volunteers make to our community each and every day changes the lives of people in our community. And that's the reason why council is wishing to become a more community-powered organisation to reflect the work that our community does. And our community partnerships funding is a very small piece of that puzzle. This year, we're welcoming 9 additional groups into the Sunshine Coast Partnerships funding family, I'd like to call it. And it's a very modest request and a very modest ask that our community groups have put onto us. If we think about the $38,000 odd contribution that council will be making to 8 of those organisations, that accounts for 7.1% of their operational expenses, which really is a very, very small and modest contribution, but it reflects the fact that our community is willing to always step up and provide support to people who need it and to causes who need it. And I'm pleased to say that council over the last 18 months has made inroads into improving our community partnerships program by increasing this program in line with CPI as a starting point. And I look forward to us continuing to do that into the future so that we know that the community groups who have to find money for operational expenditure, which is the hardest thing to do, they're not falling behind. And that's really, really important to me as a councillor. I know it's important to my colleagues as well. And I want to single out, I guess, some of the work that these community groups do and the innovative ways that they actually look to fundraise for operational expenditure. And it's the North Shore Community Centre in Division 8. And Tony Brown, the President, recently met with myself and the CEO to talk about how we could get the best out of our community centre model. And when I first was elected, the centre had a project called Project 50K, which was essentially finding $50,000 of contributions towards their operational expenditure each year. And to put it in context, we give the North Shore Community Centre $17,250 a year. So it puts in perspective the gap that our community groups are facing as they go through this process. Last financial year, they increased their goal to 70,000, Project 70K, and next year they're hoping to get to Project 90K. I've attended a number of their Bunnings barbecues, and I can tell you, Bunnings barbecues don't get you to 90,000K very quickly. So any support that we continue to give to our community groups, like the North Shore Community Centre, like Coolum District Netball in Councillor Suarez's division, like the Mapleton District Group in Councillor Law's division, these are real, tangible community benefits that this council is supporting, but really it's about recognising that we are a community-powered region already, and it's time for council to continue stepping up to the plate and supporting our community groups to continue doing the work, and I think we're doing that here today. So I commend this motion to my colleagues and look forward to hearing your reflections on your own community partnerships within your divisions today.
Thank you, Councillor Bunnag. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you also for the presentation today. I'd like to endorse everything that Councillor Bunnag said, and without this community partnership arrangement, most or many of the organisations, not only across the local authority but in Division 5, would not be financially viable. It's a vital part of assistance to them, and it's really important to see in the report that all of the applications that were made have been granted funds. There haven't been any that have been rejected. Now, in my division alone, in Division 5, although we have 5 towns, and something like around about 90 community groups. It's pleasing to see that some 40 plus of those community groups have received financial assistance. So, you know, it helps keep membership fees down. It helps the community organisations to make sure that the funds they raise is spent within the community and not on red tape such as insurance and those sorts of fees and charges that they have. So I'm really delighted to see that this is continuing, and I encourage all councillors to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Councillor Law.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I wish to speak in support of the recommendation and obviously endorse the comments from my colleague in the community portfolio, Councillor Taylor. Thank you. And just to highlight, 150 organisations will be supported to continue their work to help their community with the mission and the purpose of those 150 organisations. And when we're making our decisions and conversations around our budget and how we spend our funds, in terms of a return on investment, you will not find a better return on investment of council dollars than you will find in this programme. It is absolutely outstanding what is achieved with this small amount of support. It is only small, but what our community does with the funding creates a huge benefit in our community. And I urge your support today, everyone, for this, because without community we have nothing. And this helps our community to be stronger and support and serve our community in many ways beyond what we're able to do as a council organisation. So it is incumbent on us to support this and to continue to support the work of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I also concur the comments in regards to how valuable this program is. Just a question through you, Madam Mayor. What was the increase last year in percentage that the total pool of funding for this program?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Natoli. I'll just go back to the report from last year. So we had 144 groups last year. We've got 9 this year. I believe it was $1.15 million last year, and we're requesting 68,000. I'll just double check that figure.
So the actual increase in percentage for the pool in the budget process, like what percentage was that? Was it?
Chair, I actually don't have that percentage right now. However, the increase was, we did request 75,000 in total, and of that 68,275 was requested in addition. So I'm not sure of the actual percentage that increased by. However, it was nominal in compared to the first round of applicants that came through in 24-25.
So you did mention that this funding does help defray costs like electricity, insurance. Obviously, over the last 3 years, electricity prices in Queensland have gone up, on average in South East Queensland, 38%, and insurances have raised between 28 and 42% in South East Queensland, depending on the type of insurance. In some cases where there's
Councillor Natoli, is there a question there, or are you speaking to the motion?
The question I'm going to put is that, understanding these massive increases that these organisations would have been facing over the last 3 years, and knowing that generally our increases are in line with CPI, do we apply a stress test to understand whether these organisations are under stress and whether we should be considering actually doing more to try and, because it is incredibly valuable for what they do for us as a community, and if we had to do it, it'll cost us a lot more.
Through you, Chair. Yes, that is correct. And last year, I believe there was a 16.5% increase to cover CPI that hadn't been put on to those applications, so that did bring the level of funding up. This year we were granted 2%, and we are guaranteed, well, it was endorsed last year that we had another 2% next year, so it is helping groups with those costs that are the cost of living. we did a review last year, and this is when we asked for the 16.5% to bring it up to scale to help these groups. As you mentioned, it is only a minor contribution, and we work with groups to look at their costs, overhead costs, and how we can help with that maybe in other ways outside of funding and partnership with other groups and revenue opportunities to help with those costs as well.
Councillor Natoli, were you not wishing to speak currently? Okay. Thank you. Councillor Broderick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you to everybody that's here today and listening. This is by far one of my most favourite things that Council do, because I've seen firsthand how valuable it can be for all of our community groups. So thank you for bringing this to us. And one of the things that I love about this is that this funding, even that we're just talking about today, is supporting over 10,000 volunteers to do the work that they do within our community, bringing communities together and making us better and stronger for it. So seeing as we've got so many Glasshouse people in the room today, I also just wanted to make sure that you're also aware that there are 16 community groups within Division 1 that are recipients of this funding as well, which is really exciting. And I can tell you from experience and watching it firsthand that this funding does exactly what it needs to do. And we've got so many groups in Glasshouse. So thank you for your work that you do. Thank you for the work that this program does. And I just want to point out as well that it just doesn't stop here with the funding, with the support from Council and from our community development team. These guys go above and beyond. So it's not just about giving them the money, it's about being able to support them through different challenges that they face as community groups and working with their communities. So thank you so much for the work that you all do. Do an incredible job. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the funding for Division 1 as well that we're seeing from this. Of course, I'll be supporting this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Broderick. Councillor Landsberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I also rise to support the officer's recommendation, and thank you for bringing this report to Council. Earlier this week, we had a presentation from Lifelight Foundation, and as a critical support, as one of the most advanced aeromedical support services in the Southern Hemisphere, since their inception, they've rescued and obviously helped over 90,000 people since 1979. And obviously, I know we've got a contribution there that we're making to Lifelight, but it's important for us as a council to continue to support these facilities that actually provide such urgent and critical care right across our region. And also, Councillor Jenny, you touched on the volunteers, and the report mentioned around over 11,000 hours weekly that contribute. And when you look at what an hourly rate for a volunteer service is, if you Google it, it's around $20 an hour that they actually look at it as a financial economic benefit. And that in that region, you're looking at a couple of $100,000, around $280,000 every week that actually goes back into supporting our economy. So thank you for bringing the report. Look forward to supporting, and I'm sure by the feel of the room here, I think you'll get a unanimous decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Councillors, I also rise in support of this program. This program is about real impact, real outcomes, real community. This is what grassroots support, what back to basics looks like, about supporting our community members, our volunteers, our sporting groups, our clubs. We aim to be a local government area, a region that is connected, livable and thriving. These grants fulfil those principles. If we talk about connected, there are many ways that you can be connected, via the internet, via the road, via public transport, or via people. And that's what this funding supports, real social connection, connecting our people, giving them purpose, giving them an opportunity to enhance their lives and their lifestyle. If we look at livable, having a place to go, a club, something greater than yourself to be part of. Is there any greater way to serve our community than by supporting that particular aim? And then if you look at thriving, thriving doesn't just mean economy. Thriving means people who are happy and healthy, So if we are supporting our community groups to be connected, livable and thriving, then we as a council are fulfilling those principles that we set out to achieve, the aim, our goals that we can work towards and achieve. This is about communities being strengthened. Community is the absolute lifeblood of the Sunshine Coast. It is what we stand in this chamber to do, and I ask all of my colleagues to support this recommendation today and support this program as we support our communities. Thank you. Councillor Bunnag, would you like to close?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for your support, and to the other councillor colleagues who spoke. I want to recognise the work of the officers in this space over many years in bringing this and the improvements that have been made in the last little while, but recognise that this is a continuation of a partnership arrangement that started a number of years ago, but we're continuing that process to improve it. I did want to touch on something that Councillor Natoli asked around, and that's the stress testing of our community groups. And I think that's a real conversation that as a local government we need to be awake to. There is volunteer fatigue in our community. We recognise the fact that our volunteers contribute thousands and thousands of hours without ask for anything other than council support and other levels of government support. And when we make decisions like this, it's about being mindful of how we can better assist our community groups to avoid burnout, to avoid volunteer fatigue. And I know that there are things that we do aside from funding that help. You know, whether it's providing grant workshops that I know are very, very well attended, whether it's our sport and recreation officers who provide very good support to our sporting clubs to help them get the best out of their succession planning, managing the opportunities for grants, managing their operational expenditures. I know Spari in my division does a fantastic job of that. But we recognise that that is one piece of the puzzle, and all we can do is say thank you and try and get out of the way of our community groups as best as we can for them to deliver the services that they are to the community with the funding that we provide. So there's always going to be a desire for us to contribute more. The reality is, if it was local government, state government and federal government, we would love to be able to be providing these services, but the financial realities of the situation are, in the world that we live in, we can't. And we rely on our community groups to deliver the work that they do. So thank you to our community groups who are part of our partnership arrangements, and we look forward to providing funding certainty over the next few years for you to continue doing the work that you are for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Bunnag. I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms Patterson. Thank you. Moving on, I note the CEO has withdrawn item 8.2 from the agenda. CEO John Baker.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This item has been withdrawn. It will come to a subsequent council meeting, and that is to allow all the key stakeholders time to consider the implications of the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Mr Baker. And we now move on and welcome Ms Sondergeld to present the next item 8.3. Welcome and hello.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, CEO, councillors, ELT and community members. My name is Elise Sondergeld and I'm the Coordinator for Response Services. Today I'm here to request Council's endorsement of the Regulated Dog Systematic Inspection Program. This program is aimed at protecting the community by ensuring that regulated dogs do not pose a risk to the community health and safety, and that regulated dogs are kept in a way consistent with community expectations and the rights of individuals. Each year, Response Services seeks endorsement of the inspection program under Section 113 of the Animal Management Cats and Dogs Act of Queensland. Council's endorsements allows Response Service officers to undertake annual compliance inspections at any premises where a regulated dog resides in the region, thereby ensuring that the dog is being kept in accordance with the mandatory conditions. Last financial year, Council received 746 requests to investigate attacks or menacing behaviour related to dogs. For context, Council has approximately 54,000 registered animals. Of the 746 complaints received, 32 regulated declaration notices were issued, comprising of 27 dangerous dog and 5 menacing dog regulations. Currently, we have 135 regulated dogs in the Sunshine Coast region. In Queensland, a regulated dog is a dog that has been declared either menacing or dangerous under the Animal Management Cats and Dogs Act. A dog may be regulated where it has seriously attacked or acted in a way that causes fear to a person or another animal. A serious attack is defined as any attack in which an animal is wounded, maimed or killed, or where a person experiences bodily harm, grievous bodily harm or death. Once declared, a dog is subject to mandatory conditions for life, and these conditions are unable to be removed. Dogs that have been involved in attacks that are classified as not as serious may be declared as menacing. Menacing, while still posing a risk to our community, are not considered as aggressive as dangerous dogs. Accordingly, the requirements for keeping a menacing dog are less stringent and do not include mandatory dissectioning or the use of a muzzle in public. The mandatory conditions for owning a regulated dog are designed to protect the community whilst also giving regulated dog owners a legislative framework to safely manage their pets. Once a dog is declared dangerous or menacing, the owner must comply with specific legislative requirements. These include displaying an entry notice sign at the property indicating there's a dangerous or menacing dog on site, as you can see the yellow sign up there. The dog must wear a specialised collar and tag, the collar consisting of alternating red and yellow stripes. The owner must maintain a specialised enclosure in which the dog must be normally kept. The owner must advise council of the regulated dog changes residential address within 7 days, and if the new address is in another council area, must also advise that local government. And a dangerous dog must be muzzled in public places and must be mandatory dissected within 3 months of the declaration being issued. These conditions are necessary to managing the ongoing risk posed by regulated dogs. The systematic inspection program ensures that owners are consistently meeting these mandatory conditions. At the time of submitting the report to council, 64 audits had been completed, with 84% of regulated dog owners maintaining compliance with the conditions. 13% of inspections resulted in follow-up action for non-compliance. Where non-compliance is identified, council officers may issue a notice to rectify, issue an on-the-spot fine of just over $2,500, seize the dog for community safety, and in extreme cases prosecute the owner and/or issue a destruction notice for the dog. To date, in 24-25, the program has identified 20 regulated dogs that have passed away since the last inspection. 2 dogs have been relocated in Queensland and 2 are unknown. That map there shows the location of all the regulated dogs currently in the region. For the 25-26 inspection program, Response Services proposes to undertake the systematic inspection program for regulated dogs between the 14th of November 2025 and the 13th of November 2026. The goal is to ensure ongoing compliance with the mandatory conditions previously discussed. The estimated cost of running the program is approximately $61,000, which is funded through the registration fees paid by regulated dog owners. The year-on-year cost of running the program has decreased slightly from 24-25 financial year due to a decrease in the active regulated dogs in the region. So we went from 143 to 135. The balance of any cost recovery fee from registrations contributes to the cost of issuing regulated notices and then following up payment with the owners. Based on current numbers, we estimate that council officers will conduct 11 inspections per month, spread out across the year. Authorised officers will conduct the annual inspections at properties where regulated dogs are registered. This proactive approach allows us to monitor compliance, educate owners and identify any potential risks before incidents occur. Council's role in regulating dogs is critical to maintaining community safety. It is my recommendation and request to Council that the systematic inspection program be endorsed for the 25-26 year as outlined in the presentation. This includes improving council officers to inspect and enter properties between the 14th of November 2025 and the 13th of November 2026 as per the Animal Management Cats and Dogs Act of Queensland. By endorsing the program, we are taking an important step to ensuring that regulated dog owners continue to meet their responsibilities and protecting the wider community from potential harm. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, councillors. Councillor Dixon is the mover and the seconder. Councillor Johnston. Thank you, Councillor Dixon.
Yep. Good morning, and through you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, thank you for the staff report on this, and the presentation was fantastic. I think you've hit every point that needed to be discussed and shown to the public. And I'll come at this from a point of view where I love dogs. I've got 2 dogs. I'm very pro dogs. But you do realise and respect as a dog owner that you've got to take certain precautions. And it really didn't resonate with me too much until I had my son. And when I'm out and about with my son with other dogs, it does start to make you think differently about safety, because you're in an environment where you've got to look after a younger person. And it really made me think that there are a lot more things to just being a dog owner than feeding them and taking care of them. It's about the protection of other people. And I say this because in the community, if you ask them how council's doing in this space, you'll continually hear how well the council staff and the organisation are taking care of people's safety. We've got a lot of beaches that are accessible, a lot of footpath. Every footpath is accessible by dogs on a leash. You've got public parks where people have their dogs on leash and off leash. You've got dog parks. There are a lot of places and a lot of chances where you can run into harm. This is why proactive dog management and responsible ownership is very, very important. You think about the registrations. We've got a lot of registrations. I think you said there's over 50,000 registered dogs. This is an extremely low percentage of dogs that have actually been caught and made to comply with the legislation. This is extremely small. So what's the point I'm trying to make? The point is that I think most owners are doing the right thing. There are a lot of responsible dog owners out there, and I think we see this time and time again. In fact, I only just saw my first regulated dog sign at Palmview. This is in 19 years, the first sign I've seen in the community. It's around the corner, actually. I took a different route. And it just goes to show that we don't actually have a lot of problems on the coast with menacing and dangerous dogs. And when we do, we are not just following the legislation, but I think our council team take things very, very seriously. In fact, I know when there's been instances that have popped up in the community, the staff update the local councillor straight away. They know about the details. They know about, well, they've probably heard from a local resident that's put a complaint in that day as well. But the staff are responding to those people immediately. So I don't think we're just following the legislation. I think the team go a little bit over and above to service the community on this. But really, what's the take-home message? This actual service is paid for by the people that are being regulated. This is not coming out of the pocket of good dog owners that are doing nothing wrong. We do care about the community. If we receive complaints, we investigate them. I think you mentioned there were 700 odd complaints, and that's a lot of complaints, but the overall figure to see such a small amount of regulated and menacing dogs and dangerous dogs, it's quite low. So I'd put it to my colleagues today that this is the point I make. And this is coming from a very pro-dog person. We're doing a good job. We have a lot of open space for our pets. We have a lot of opportunities where we could run into more trouble, but we don't. I think the Sunshine Coast is doing very well, and people are taking their roles as dog owners very, very seriously. But when we are needed, the council staff do step up, and, you know, we do enact the law. And to those people out there that think we may be too tough on dogs, well, I'd really challenge you to look at the figures. The figures really speak for everything that has to do with safe ownership and control. Because to me right now, if I look at those figures, it shows that we are open for business. We are regulating where we need to. And most people are doing the right thing. Madam Mayor, this has my full support. I know we do this every year. This is required. The staff need to go out. We need to do the inspections. We heard it's 11 a month. I actually feel a lot safer as a parent, as a dog owner, to know that staff are out there every month checking enclosures, checking properties. Makes me feel a little bit better about being in the public realm.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Elise, for the work that you've done. As Councillor Dixon and other councillors have mentioned, it's such an important program that we've had over the years, and obviously important to manage the risks associated with dogs that are a danger and have presented as a danger. I have a couple of questions. Obviously, the collar and the badge that the dog, regulated dog, how well is the public educated? Councillor Dixon just mentioned the sign on the property, but when a dog is out, obviously needs to be muzzled, must wear the identifiable collars, but how aware are other dog owners who don't have a regulated dog of that identifiable collar, so that they can identify immediately that that dog is a regulated dog, and potentially, if not muzzled or out in public in the right way, that they could report.
Through the chair, that requirement was brought in ad hoc quite a number of years ago. It's now a standard requirement Australia-wide. So when it came into Queensland, there was an education campaign around the collars and what they meant. I think Sunshine Coast Council was one of the first to bring it in before it was mandated in the Animal Management Act. Department of Primary Industries is currently running an education campaign under the Safer Dog Laws program. So if you look on the Biosecurity Queensland page, they're doing a lot of community-based education around regulated dogs and safety around regulated dogs, including the collar and the identification of them.
Yep. So hopefully eventually it'll be something that people would identify immediately when they see the dog. The other question I have is, it comes under Schedule 1.8, Notice of Change of Address. And obviously, if an owner of a regulated dog changes residential address, the owner must give the relevant local government notice of the owner's new address within 7 days of making the change. And 2, the new residential address in another local government area, the owner must give notice to the other local government. Do we actually check that they do that? Is that part of our process to make sure that that notification, as a safeguard, that we do that double check? But the other question I really wanted to focus on is, I couldn't find it here, what is the obligation of the owner if they go on holidays and bring their dog? Because can they take a regulated dog to another destination? And obviously there's a lot of requirements in their home to be able to secure the home, but if they're going to another area, we had an incident in Curramundi where we had dogs that had come from North.
Councillor Natoli, you've posed 2 questions there now. We'll let Ms Sondergaard answer those before the next.
I just want to make sure that, we do have that opportunity to, know what happens when somebody does, or if they do have the right to take their dog on holidays.
You, Councillor. So when a council regulates a dog, the regulating council has the obligation to inform that owner of the conditions. That includes keeping it usually within the enclosure at the property where the dog is registered. To take an animal on holiday, they would not be able to meet that condition. That would mean that they were subject to penalties under the Act unless the location they were going to also had an enclosure that met the mandatory conditions in the area. So that's very unlikely. So if you're taking your dog on holiday, chances are you're in breach of your conditions. So under the Act, we have the ability to action any incident that happens in our area. And with the changes that happened last year, any regulated dog that's involved in a secondary incident would be subject to a destruction order that could be issued by our council. So there would be very steep penalties for non-compliance.
And just the other question that I had was about notification and us double checking that the obligation's obviously on the owners to notify the new local government that they've moved into that area. Do we double check?
We would notify the council, regardless of whether they're Queensland or in another state and territory in Australia. We would always notify the council if we were aware that the dog was coming into their area, because there are provisions of regulation all through Australia. So told us we will always take that step and double check.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'd like to thank our regulatory team for the fantastic job they do. Councillor Dixon and I are always kept informed as portfolio councillors, and of any dogs that become regulated. And our staff or our regulatory team do a fantastic job in managing those sorts of animals. Unfortunately, sometimes it's not necessarily the dog that's negligent, but the owner. And it's a matter of changing the thinking and the responsibilities of the owners and forcing them to take appropriate action. We don't have to euthanize many dogs because pretty well, should they occur, in most cases, the people either follow the guidelines, euthanize the dog themselves in some serious cases where the people are really take responsibility, or they move the dog to another location outside of our local authority. But even if they do that, the declaration follows that dog to the new local authority. Now, it's really quite disappointing that some people, and it's a very small minority, don't discipline or train their dogs properly, and they are negligent in that they leave the roller door up, or they don't close the gates properly, or they don't have a fence high enough, etc., and as a result the dogs do get out. And when they do get out, if they kill another, or severely attack another dog, kill another dog, or attack an individual, it's very distressing for all parties involved. So I'd encourage all owners of dogs to be responsible in relation to how they deal with their dogs. It's important that people don't buy breeds which are, for want of a better word, regularly the guilty parties in relation to all this sort of these attacks. However, as the owner of a couple of dachshunds, I know that the previous CEO used to refer to dachshunds as land sharks. Now that can be the case. However, if they are trained properly, disciplined, and controlled properly and socialised, then that's not the case. So we have a couple of dachshunds. In fact, we've got a third one, which doesn't cause us any trouble whatsoever. So I'd just like to support the staff in everything they do, and for those people who are wondering what we're laughing about, our third dachshund is actually a stuffed leather dachshund. So thank you very much.
Because that would contravene our regulation if you had a third. Thank you, Councillor, because that was about to cause me concern. So thank you for clarifying the nature of your third pet. Councillor Landsberg, if you could now speak.
I'll be very quick, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you for the report, and obviously I rise to support the inspection program for regulated dogs. Just a question, or just a couple of questions, is in relation to the amendments to the Act last year in August 2024, Queensland local governments are now required to issue mandatory destruction orders for regulated dogs involved in serious attacks. So just for our public in regards to describing what a serious attack is and what level of sort of a serious attack is that you would actually issue a destruction order on a dog.
A serious attack is defined under the legislation. So a serious attack is anything that maims, wounds or causes the death of an animal or causes bodily harm, grievous bodily harm or death to a person. So it is quite a low threshold if you look at the definition of grievous bodily harm in the criminal code. We do like to use common sense. We would generally say a physical injury to either a person or an animal would meet that benchmark.
Thank you. And you did mention that if the dog was to obviously be part of a second attack, that would obviously initiate an immediate destruction order?
It would be required under the law to issue a destruction order if there was a secondary attack.
Thank you. And in the report, it just talks about 84% of inspected owners are compliant. 13% require a follow-up notice. The other 3%, where does that sit?
They would be the ones that are unknown because they've left the Shire without notification, or the ones that have moved out of the Shire.
Thank you. No further questions, but I fully support it. And thank you for our response services and the great work that our team, I know they work in difficult situations, and as a councillor in Caloundra for Division 2, we have had serious attacks, and the impact to our communities, it is quite broad, but thankful for obviously what you do behind the scenes because it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Councillor Broderick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you. Thank you for this report. Really quick question. Just in regards to the inspections, how do you go about those and how are our staff kept safe in those situations?
So our annual inspection program is currently being run by our 2 senior investigations officers with the support of our animal management officers. So it is a 2-up attendance. We do request that the owner restrain or put the animal in the enclosure when we attend to prevent anything from happening. If the animal is showing aggression to our officers, we request that the owner scan the dog rather than us entering the enclosure to confirm the microchip of the animal. Officers this year have had an upgrade to their body-worn camera technology, which now allows us to see in live time not only where they are, but to log in and watch their body cams if we have concerns. And that's in addition to all our current safety protocols and procedures. They've also got spot gens, which is an immediate emergency services request for assistance should they be in a life-ending situation. And there's very strict protocols about how they approach and attend and interact with the persons.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to make note of the fact that our staff and council workers are going into some very dangerous situations and the protections that we put in place for them. And Madam Mayor, it would be very remiss of me not to notice that Councillor Johnston has got his Dash Hound badge on today just in support of this motion today too. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Broderick. Councillor Dixon, would you like to close? No? Okay, I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms Sondergaard. Ms Jacobs, thank you. We now move on to item 8.4 and we welcome Ms Dunbar to the podium to present this item. Thank you, Ms Dunbar.
Executive team, I'm here to present the financial performance report for August. At the end of August 2025, Council's operating result is an operating surplus of $167.2 million, which is $4.6 million above the current year-to-date budget. This variance is due to revenue being higher than budget by $1.7 million and expenses being lower than budget by $2.9 million. The major significant variances in revenue include net rates, $947,000 below budget. Interest received from investments is $279,000 lower than budget. Other revenue is $3.1 million higher than budget, with notable contributions from Resilient Rivers SEQ funding, $775,000, revegetation offset revenue, $1 million, recoupment of $606,000. To note, the larger variances will form part of the Budget Review 1 revisions. Year-to-date expenditure is $2.9 million lower than budget, with core materials and services below budget by $3.2 million. Key areas contributing to lower than expected spending include transport network operations, $1.3 million, majority related to quarry expenditure, below budget in line with less internal sales than forecast. Transport network management, $386,000, below in budget in streetlight electricity, $245,000, and also multi-deck expenditure, $110,000 lower than budget. Digital and information services, telecommunications are lower than budget, $106,000. The balance is related to end-of-year processing, shifting expenses back to 24-25 financial year to align with correct reporting periods, reducing current year spend figures. We also have operating projects below budget by $33,000, and our levy programs are currently below budget year-to-date by $471,000. Employee costs are also higher than budget year-to-date by $469,000. The Capital Works program has progressed 9.9% with $26 million expended, which is $4.4 million lower than year-to-date budget. The core Capital Works program has spent $17.8 million, which is ahead of year-to-date budget by $549,000. As at the 31st of August, Council's cash balance, excluding trust, is $306.3 million, with unrestricted cash at $125.5 million and restricted cash at $180.8 million. Council's debt at the 31st of August is $428 million, with a debt payment made in August of $14 million, and our current new borrowings for 25-26 is $51.6 million. Council currently has 4 investments totalling $90 million, with term deposits maturing between 30 and 364 days, a weighted average interest rate return of 4.32%. The current risks, as outlined in the report, key elements of the 25-26 budget are based on management estimates and assumptions for rates and charges, revenue, interest revenue and finance costs, depreciation, which includes asset valuation, useful life and asset condition estimates, and recurrent capital expenditure, which includes non-capitalisation estimates. Management has used its best endeavours and judgment to determine suitable estimates and assumptions based on the available data, with reference to independent sources and relevant historic information where possible. There is a risk that actual results may vary from the estimates, and material variances will be monitored and reported to Council through this monthly financial performance report and periodical budget reviews. Council's operating result includes savings initiatives of $13 million, with $7.5 million attributed to the employee vacancy rate. So failure to achieve the budgeted operating result will negatively impact Council's financial sustainability, both in the short term and the long term. So ongoing monitoring is required to ensure the capital works program is delivered within the approved budget and scope. And the recommendation today that Council receive and note the report titled August 2025 Financial Performance Report.
Thank you, Ms Dunbar. Councillors, someone to move the item. Councillor Hungerford, a seconder. Councillor Broderick. Councillor Hungerford.
Through you, Madam Mayor. As can be seen through the report there, it's a mixed bag of ups and downs. With the increased cost of producing capital works out there, because the construction index is still up, cost of delivering is not going down. And I'm noticing that, even though the CPI is falling, but the CPI and the construction index are two entirely different things. So with that, we've got the operating result. Has been stated before, $167.2 million. That's $4.6 million above current year budget. Operating revenue, $274.5, which is $1.7 million higher than the year-to-date budget. Net rates, $947,000 below budgets, because there hasn't been the anticipated new rates properties coming on, hasn't eventuated, so there's a shortfall there. Interest received from investments, $279,000 lower than budget. That's because of our low cash balance. We haven't got as much to invest as we've had in the past. $107.3 million in operating expenses, which is $2.9 million or 2.6% lower than the year-to-date budget. Now, core materials and services are below budget by $3.2 million. Operating projects below budget $33,000. Levy projects below budget $471,000. And employee costs $469,000 higher than budget. So that means our expenditure, $26 million of Council's capital work program has been expended, which is $4.4 million or 14.5% lower than year to date, and that could be when projects are completed, when the actual payments happen, could cause that difference there. The core capital program is expended $17.8 million or $549,000, 3.2% higher than the year-to-date budget. Now, our cash balance as of the 31st of August is $306.3 million, excluding trust. That's elevated at the moment because we've just had a rates run, but as we deliver projects and expend through the next 6 months, that will drop dramatically. And I have concern for the level of unrestricted cash, which is very low, and we need to build into the future. Fortunately, our debt balance, and I'm very big on this, is $428 million, which was down $14 million on the repayments we've had. But because of the loan borrowings we're going to have to take, we're doing it towards June to reduce the interest on that. We're doing it as late in the year as possible. And I'll be watching that very closely. We've only used that as a short-term thing for the shortest term possible on loans to reduce the impact on the ratepayers. With that, we've got Budget Review 1 coming up next, and then Budget Review 2 will be very important in focusing on where we're travelling through the year. But we have got a tight focus on our expenditure and incomes there, but it is a challenging environment and we have to work very closely through the rest of the year. So I commend this report to you as an accurate position of where we are at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Bunnag.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A question, if I may, through you. Ms Dunbar, the operating result in terms of revenue net rates, 947,000 below budget. Can you give an indication of some of the causes of that?
So through the chair, the majority of the reason for the rates being lower than budget is due to a 4% drop in the number of transitory houses from our January 2025 levels. So it's basically a change in the mix of properties, which is reflected in the reduced revenues. So as properties move from transitory and non-owner occupied rate categories to a principal place of residence, they're moving to a lower rate sense in the dollar from where they were first categorised when we issued the rate notice.
Thank you for that answer, and through you, Madam Mayor, I might speak to this point now. You know, sometimes when we look at financial figures such as this, you would think that having $947,000 less revenue is a bad thing. And in real terms, for a council of this size, and our financial position it is, but from my perspective, there actually is a silver lining in this. And the fact that, you know, council over a number of budgets now has made a very deliberate approach to encouraging a transition from transitory accommodation into more long-term accommodation offerings in our community. And to see that there has been a 4% change since January 2025, from my perspective, is actually a good thing, because we do have a housing shortage on the Sunshine Coast, and we've had many debates in this place about the merits of certain particular developments. But one thing that many people in this community keep saying to me is, Taylor, there are so many people who have their houses from a holiday letting perspective and entire houses in suburban areas. You know, what is council actually doing to address that? And before I got elected, I made it very, very clear that my perspective was that it's the economic narrative about making it less affordable for people to let entire houses in suburban areas would put downward pressure on the desire, really, to rent those out for holiday letting. And it's working. People might not like it, people who own it, but the reality is it is actually working. It is shifting houses that are being holiday let in residential areas back into the long-term renting pool or for people who own it. And that is making a difference for families, it's making a difference for people in our communities, and it's making a difference, I think, in places like my own Yurumba, where we have almost over 190 transitory accommodation residences in a very small beachside suburb. And if 4% of those homes, you know, using round figures, can actually transition into long-term accommodation for people in our community, I think that's a good thing. So from my perspective, you know, can't judge a book by its cover necessarily in terms of these figures. Understand that it doesn't help our bottom line, but it absolutely does help provide a diversity of housing mix from a transitory accommodation going into long-term letting.
Thank you, Councillor Bunnag. Councillor Hungerford, would you like to close? No. Councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Ms Dunbar. We move now on to our next item, 8.5, and you will present that item. Thank you.
So I am here to present the 25-26 Budget Review 1 report. So the budget review is conducted under Section 170 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, which allows Council to amend its annual budget by resolution at any time before the end of the financial year. Major budget reviews are undertaken periodically to reflect management's best estimate of Council's financial position at the end of a financial year. The first budget review for this financial year identifies works from the 24-25 budget not completed by 30th of June 2025 and requires funds to be carried over into this financial year, plus operating and capital expenditure items with additional funding sources. The result of this budget review leaves the 25-26 operating result unchanged at operating surplus of $771,000. The operating revenue has increased by $3.18 million, bringing total revenue to $714.2 million. And at the same time, operating expenditure has also been increased by $3.18 million, resulting in a revised total expenditure of $713.5 million. So the key operating adjustments include the carryover of unspent funds from 24-25 to ensure the continuation and completion of ongoing operating projects of $634,000, additional budget requests of $621,000, and new grant funding and commercial revenue, which has seen a favourable net impact of $1.255 million. This budget review has also resulted in a $27.2 million increase to the 25-26 Capital Works program from $262.3 million to $289.5 million. So the key capital adjustments include carryover of 24-25 unspent funds of $11 million to reflect the need to align the current budget with project timelines and delivery commitments. We've also been able to secure an additional $11 million in grant funding, matched by corresponding increase in expenditure. New budget requests of $20.9 million, bring forward of out-of-year budgets of $4.7 million, and also deferring $20.5 million. To note, the projects with deferred budgets have only had part of the budget deferred, and these projects are still continuing and will have sufficient funds to ensure scheduled works can be completed in 25-26. The 25-26 forecast closing total cash balance has increased by $27.1 million. The increase is attributed to receipt of additional grant funding of $15.8 million and additional cash of $11.3 million at the 30th of June 2025 compared to the adopted budget closing cash forecast. The total closing cash balance is now $298.5 million. The total cash increase is entirely due to a rise in the restricted cash forecast. The forecast for unrestricted cash remains unchanged, with additional debt funding and the working capital facility being utilised to ensure we maintain the unrestricted cash balance at 2.4 months of cover. Appendix B of the report contains a list of projects for Council's consideration under the 25-26 Minor Capital Works Program. So while Budget Review 1 focuses on the estimated financial position at the end of the current financial year, it needs to be acknowledged that further work is required across both the capital and operating budgets to ensure there is no impact to Council's financial sustainability, both for the short term and long term. Key areas requiring ongoing attention include the achievement of revenue targets, the delivery of the $13 million in saving initiatives, which is included in the operating result, review and adjustment of key operating items, which have been based on management estimates and assumptions, which have not been reflected in Budget Review 1 due to the pending completion of the 24-25 financial statement audit. These items include interest revenue, depreciation and recurrent capital expenditure. This work will need to be addressed during the next budget review process and considered in the development of the 26-27 Capital Works Program and the 26-27 operating budget. And the recommendation for consideration is noted in the report and on the screen.
Great. Thank you, Ms Dunbar. Councillors, someone to move. Councillor Hungerford as seconder. Councillor Broderick. Thank you. Councillor Hungerford.
Madam Mayor, the result of this budget review will have the 25-26 operating result remain at $771,000. That is very pleasing because even though it's only thin, we're not going further into deficit, so we have held that position, which is very important going into the future. Capital revenues have increased 11 million from 163 million to 174 million. Capital expenditures increased 27 million from 262 to 289 million. Borrowings for 25-26 have increased from 15.1 million, I'll speak to that further on, to 66.8 million. Now, the amendments included in this budget review will increase the 25-26 forecast closing cash balance by the 27 million as of the 30th of June 2026. This increase is entirely due to 27 million rise in restricted cash forecast driven by the receipt of grant funding, which is very good to receive. We've got to have corresponding funding to go with that as well to deliver a lot of those projects. So the forecast for unrestricted cash remains unchanged, with additional debt funding and working capital facility being utilised to maintain the unrestricted cash balance at 2.4 months. I want to see that that's only a short-term thing and we do it for as short a term as possible to reduce the interest with the impact on the ratepayers as we stabilise the budget and get ourselves back into a positive operating environment into the future. Now, this one I'll labour on a bit because I believe all local governments are going to run into this problem. Loan borrowings for 25-26 will increase by 15.2 million on the 51 we already looked at to bring it to 66.8 million. The additional borrowings are being used to support the acquisition for trunk infrastructure necessary to support the Residential Activation Fund development in Reachie City Centre. When development happens, developers have to pay infrastructure charges for networks and roads and drainage and those sort of things. For quite a number of years now, the state has had a cap on that. So you can't charge the full cost. And I've always been critical that ratepayers have had to pick up that gap in the past. But because the construction index is running higher than the CPI, that gap has been growing over time. The difference between what it actually costs to deliver to what we are receiving. And I don't believe we're going to be the last local government to have this problem, where we now have to increase our borrowings. We're now borrowing to fund that shortfall that's in our local government infrastructure program. And I believe that needs to be looked at into the future because I think all local governments are going to struggle with this. Because while that deficit and gap grows each year, the pressure on ratepayers, on the rates, and now government's having to look at borrowing to keep up with the pressure of that growth. I think this is a serious issue that needs to be looked at, and the state needs to be taken into account that gap needs to be closed to take the pressure off the ratepayers. It disappointed me that ratepayers were doing it out of their general revenue to plug that gap, but now we're having to borrow. I believe it's a real tragedy and it needs to be looked at a lot further into the future because it means local governments get challenged on their sustainability. So that's something we really need to push through, especially through the LGAQ and the state government, to address that issue because it's growing every year. And I do not like to see us having to borrow money for that sort of thing. Madam Mayor, we've got a stable spot at the moment. We're looking through into the future. Budget Review 2 will be very important on controlling our expenditures and making sure we don't fall further into deficit in the future. And I want to make sure that I'm not a debt person. I like to only borrow when necessary and have it for as short a term as possible to reduce those interest bills. So I'll be watching that very closely. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Landsberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'd just like to echo my fellow councillors' comments there that yes, definitely we need to be very prudent about borrowing and make sure that aligns with our strategic projects. Just a question, or I'd just like to actually put to the CEO, and on a smaller capital amount of funding, we received a petition in December 2024 in regards to lighting of the Dickey Beach skate park. Currently there's a second petition that's been circulated for lighting. For minor capital works, I have $52,000 left over. But through the CEO, I'd just like you, and I'm receiving pushback from the organisation in relation to moving forward with the lighting of that precinct. And I must stress this is on the back of antisocial behaviour there's actually initiated Operation Sorcery from the QPS to look at areas that have been frequented by some serious assaults. And I'd just like to note in the chamber that during the construction of the Wind and Sea Community Clubhouse, we spent thousands of dollars on compliant lighting. Now, the location of that building is closer to the actual foreshore than what the Dickey Beach Skate Park is. And I just appreciate the opportunity here to sort of share that with my fellow councillors and with the CEO. But yes, definitely I support the officer's recommendation, and thank you for bringing this to council.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. In regards to the BR1 report, I just wanted to touch on some adjustments that have occurred in Division 6 through the amended Minor Capital Works program. There are two issues that I'll touch on today. One is some issues around the Maroochydore Cricket Club. There's some matters concerning electrical safety. So there's been a $10,000 adjustment to assist them with upgrading their electrical systems and switchboards. So we're very happy to help them with that. The second one is an issue at Palmview on Recreation Drive. So from Symphony Way, which is the access to the Bruce Highway service road, to Tranquility Way, Recreation Drive is basically the major spine. And I've been receiving constant complaints around speeding vehicles. There's been multiple accidents, people feeling unsafe crossing the road. So we've had to adjust the project. I was going to start building this year a footpath up Karawatha Street in Buderim. I've had to cancel that project because this project's more important. This is about people unable to be able to cross the road safely in Recreation Drive at Palmview. And I've met with staff. They've, again, needed funding to do the project because they can't just pull money out of thin air to fix problems everywhere. So I've had to stump up that money, and this Minor Capital Works program has been able to allow the staff to start design work and engage with the community. So I just want to be transparent about that. Karawatha Street's no longer happening. That money is now going to be allocated at Palmview, but we need to sort the issue. And I'd also credit the team here in council for responding so quickly because we've received over 10 complaints officially in the system. The team have met with me on site already. There was about 4 or 5 council staff. They're very serious. They need this money to get the program underway. And I'm very thankful to the finance team actually for getting this into BR1 because I only just met the staff in the last 2 weeks. I don't know how they got this in here so quickly, but I really appreciate your effort.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Broderick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Thank you for this report, Sharon, and all of your team. Just quickly, we know that every budget comes with risk, and one of the risks we've spoken about there is that this includes this BR1, as did our previous budget, includes a $13 million savings initiative. How do you see that we're going to be able to track that and keep on top of that? Have we got process in motion? And are we able to see what effect that's having already? Sorry, whoever wants to take that? Everybody's not giving me
So through the chair, so in that $30 million savings initiatives is obviously we had the vacancy rate. Yep. So with respect to the way the vacancy rate works is we have natural attrition. When people leave council, you always have a lag between someone leaving and someone being employed. So with respect to the vacancy rate, I think that's a lower risk of being able to actually achieve that. So with respect to the $5.5 million, I know that that's why I kind of noted that there is additional work to do, and I know the executive are kind of looking to start working towards where that $5.5 million comes from, and obviously it takes time because we want to make sure that it's long-term rather than just short-term savings. So we can definitely, as part of the monthly financial report, I'm happy to kind of track that separately with respect to showing you where we're at with the vacancy rate and also with the $5.5 million.
That'd be great. Really appreciate that because as per the last report, we saw that vacancy rate up there a little bit. So it'd be good to see that tracking along. So thank you. And just generally about BR1, thank you for the work that you've done. And speaking specifically for Division 1, we've seen some of those projects that have being carried over from last financial year, which is some of those increases that you're seeing in the budget overall from all of the divisions. The good thing about that is those projects are actually being delivered and completed, and we can see some of those happening already. So thank you for the teams making that happen. And we've also got some great outcomes in there as well. So as much as they may be pushed back and deferred a little bit later in this financial year, they're still coming. So thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Councillor Broderick. Councillor Law.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the report and BR1. On the 7th of July, when we put down the budget for this year, I made some comments and observations very clearly, very directly, very specifically about the loss of investment in the hinterland, loss of investment, and specifically a project in relation to our workplaces strategy over 3 very specific projects. And I made it very clear that the one for the hinterland and NAMB, or the hinterland library, was not going ahead. I made comments along the lines of blood, sweat and tears to ensure that we worked hard to make a difference in the hinterland. And we're at Budget Review 1. And Budget Review 1 is about realigning what happened last financial year, allocating funds to make sure that we can continue the business around our major capital works programs. And that's a process that we have to go through. We go through it every year. And it's been done here again. It's been done correctly and accurately. But I noticed some of the comments around the LGIP fund and LGIP projects that we need to advance and how we're allocating borrowings to do that. And when I look at all of the work that has been done, what I'm seeing, unfortunately, is more and more for the Maroochydore PDA, for the Maroochydore City Centre, the Maroochydore, where we're standing today. I'm not seeing the same effort, commitment and determination to make a difference in the hinterland. I acknowledge some work is being done, but we have not even got the wheels moving. Meanwhile, the response to what's happening in Maroochydore CBD, the PDA here, and other places in our coastal corridor is simply just more for Maroochydore. That needs to change, and it needs to change urgently. You can probably sense I'm speaking against the BR1. I will not be supporting this today. I urge others to consider what's in front of us. It is doing an important task financially. It is not doing the right tasks for this region. When you look at and you consider LGIP projects, they generally work on the basis of the top 10 trunk infrastructure projects for the region. The way the region is growing, those top 10 projects just do not occur in the hinterland along the railway towns. They're focused where this growth occurs. And just as a side note to this, we're getting pressure through the planning scheme of no more in the coastal corridor. And yet there is no relevant infrastructure improvements to encourage people to want to come in the hinterland towns because there's no investment from the council. That needs to change. I made that very, very clear on the 7th of July. I did support the budget on the 7th of July because strategically that's what we had to do. We have to have a budget so that we are not taken over by administrators. We have to do a BR1, but it is not working in the right way from my perspective, and I cannot support this. And I put us all on notice that we have got a lot more work to do because we haven't even started putting attention in other places where it needs to happen. I can't support it, I won't support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Please refrain from making noise in the chamber. Thank you. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. May I remind Councillor Law that the pressure of development is happening on the coast. And we are a council for the entire region. That's our primary responsibility under the Local Government Act, is that we act as councillors for the whole region, and then our divisional councillor responsibility comes in. The fact is that the state government saw that they invested $83 million, the greatest amount that we've ever received in the history of the Sunshine Coast for the PDA, which required us to do certain things, and that is to bring in trunk infrastructure. Trunk infrastructure, LGIP, as you would know, 70% of it is reclaimed back by developers. If there's development happening, that's where the money comes back. 30% is paid by the rest of the ratepayers. And Councillor Hungerford mentioned about that disproportion is hurting us as a council.
Councillor Natoli, will you speak to Budget Review 1,
So
to the
I want to
item?
talk about, if the Councillor Law obviously took the opportunity to use Budget Review 1. If you allowed him to talk.
Through you,
Just a
Madam Mayor,
moment.
I spoke to BR1. I did not speak divisionally. I spoke regionally, and I was extremely careful to do so. So I refute the comments being made now.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor
Well, I'll make the comments
Natoli,
that
please speak to
supports
BR1.
where the growth pressures are. My division, and along with Caloundra and many of the others along the coast, are under so much pressure. Residents are upset about the fact that their lifestyles are being challenged. We protect the hinterland in terms of their lifestyle. Most of the pressure is happening on the coast. We do.
Okay, so returning back to
the point I want to make is that BR1 reflects clearly where the pressure is, reflects where we need to put the funding and investment. I understand the issues that you face as a councillor in trying to deliver the outcomes for your community, but you need to understand that under the regional plan, the pressure, the growth pressures is happening on the coast. And that's where developers will have to contribute back through LGIP. That's why the LGIP programs are funded predominantly on the coast, because that's where most of the growth is happening.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. Councillor Bunnag.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Rise with a bit of trepidation to get into the middle of this, but I will anyway. So here we go. The largest investment that's happened on the Sunshine Coast from any level of government was actually $2.75 billion from two levels of government, federal and state, regarding direct rail from Beerwah to Caloundra at the time. So let's just establish that first fact. Second fact, LGIP is going to run out at some point in time, and it's because of what Councillor Hungerford has identified, that there is a gap between the cost of delivering infrastructure and what developers are required to contribute. And that's not set by council, that's set by the state government. And we realise that there's a problem. So what's the solution to that? We have a really difficult task as a council and as a region to consider where we are going into the future. We are a growth region. We recognise that regardless of what our personal views are and whether we want our particular divisions to look like a particular thing, we have pressures from the state government and the federal government, realistically, in terms of how many people are going to be coming to this region in the future. So we have to manage that, we have to plan for it. So we have a choice as a council, and it's a very, very clear choice from my perspective. We either deliver less infrastructure and people continue to complain about a lack of infrastructure to support growth, which we know is coming, or we invest through debt. That's literally the choice we have to make. And if you look at our capacity to repay debt, which is really the measure of financial sustainability that we should be talking about, council right now is in relatively good shape. You know, historically, it's had a 2 in front of it, so a good measure is anywhere between 0 and 4. You get towards 4, your capacity to pay is reducing. This council has consistently had a 2 in front of it with respect to that leverage ratio. We're now at 3.2, and we need to be mindful going ahead into future years about what we are going to be borrowing for. And I want to make this point very clear to people in the community. Debt is not a bad thing if it is managed appropriately and we use it for projects that we know we need to prioritise to cater for growth coming to this region. So when it comes to BR1, I understand that there are many projects across the region that have been deferred for a range of different reasons. My division is no different, but I'm looking at this through a lens of financial sustainability, because if we are not financially sustainable, we're delivering nothing. That's the reality going forward. So from my perspective, as much as it frustrates me that we do see deferral of projects, this is something that I have to support today, because it actually provides that level of financial sustainability that opens up opportunities in the future years for us to deliver more infrastructure. But if we don't get it right now, it is people in our community who will pay when we have to raise our rates even more beyond limits that people can tolerate in the years ahead. So I'll be supporting this today. That's the reason why, because I think it's the financially responsible thing to do in this particular moment.
Thank you, Councillor Bunnag. Councillor Hungerford, would you like to close?
It's because we've got low cash reserves. I don't think we're the only local government in that sphere at the moment because of the costs of delivering. And all our divisions have had reductions in expenditure and capital works because we've got to live within our means. And we're trying to do that. And like it's been pointed out, that state government mandated cap on development actually paying its own way is really making a hole in things. For the first time, we're having to borrow to try and fill that gap. That's not a good position to be in. But that's mandated on us by the state. Not something we've created. And all local governments are going to be in that role. And so what I'm saying here is now our budget reviews, 1s and 2 and 3, coming into the year tells us we make adjustments. Because what we've managed to do is stabilise any further deficit in our budget. We're maintaining that wafer-thin operating result we've got there, and that's very important. That's stabilising us before we can climb out of this. And there will be a bit of pain. I know my area's had projects that have gone off the 10-year capital works program. We've all had to wear that for sustainability. And yes, Jay's right, we've got to be councillors for the whole region, not just wanting everything for our own area, and I think the majority of us are doing that. We've got to be responsible, and that's what we're doing, and I commend you. This budget review is getting us onto that path of sustainability. We've got to keep that going, and further budget reviews and our budget next year. We're on the right path. It isn't easy, it's tough. It means we've got to take some losses and things that we would like to have, but that's about being financially responsible, and that's what we're doing. So I commend this budget review as very responsible and steady as it goes into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford, for closing. I'll now put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Councillors Broderick, Landsberg, Burns, Natoli, Johnston, Dixon, Hungerford, Bunnag, Suarez, Mayor Natoli. Those against? Councillor Law. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Ms Dunbar. We'll now break for morning tea and we'll return at 11 a.m. Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us if you're online. We're moving on now to item 8.6. Mr Parsons is here to answer any questions. So thank you for that. There is no presentation for this item. And if we do have any questions, as I said, Mr Parsons is in the room and available. Can I have someone move the motion for this? Sure. Yes. Councillor Broderick will be the mover and the seconder, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Broderick, would you like to speak?
Like always a privilege to be on the Audit Committee, and it's no secret that we've got a few challenges ahead of us, both in budget and asset management, and all of those have been noted in the Audit Committee meeting minutes from the last meeting that we had with the Audit Committee stating that they wanted to be kept abreast and checked on all of the stages of the process as we go through our asset management system and making sure that those processes are on track. There's some good news in there as well, talking about how our cyber security and looking after our people and all of those things that are really important as well, that Council are doing well at. So yes, the Audit Committee is doing a great job of keeping us on track, and just as well, you'll notice in the minutes that we'll also be looking for a new committee member down the track as well. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Broderick. No other councillors. Councillor, would you like to close? No? Okay, I'll now put the motion to the vote then. All those in favour? And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, there are no notices of motion today, so we'll move on to petitions. Councillor Broderick, put down your coffee cup because you have 2 petitions to table today.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I do have 2 petitions today. One from Glasshouse. As you can see, we've got very dedicated people in Glasshouse for a whole range of activities at the moment, and the community have been getting really involved. So we've had all sorts of things, including declarations and surveys all done. But this one I'd like to bring to your attention today. This has been put by our lead petitioner, A. Clark, and it's in regards to MCU 25/0215 at 31 Bruce Parade, Glasshouse Mountains. It's a 17-page petition with 226 signatures regarding this development. And I won't read through all of the petition, and we will have access to that later. But it's for a school that has been proposed to go in the centre of the Glasshouse Mountains township with a significant number of students for a trade school and for disconnected kids as well, disengaged children. So what has really impressed me about this is the way that they've gone about it. It's really long, so I'm going to cut it down. Although most signatories felt this is not the right place for a school, the preference being for more shops or something to support the town or tourism, the message was clear that if something is developed on this site, please make it small and fit for purpose in our town. Ensure it is a Queensland country look and feel and does not dominate the main street in size or occupation. And in doing so, and in doing this and keeping the site development small, it will help to see limited impact on existing shops, existing traffic issues, pedestrian walkway and transport system issues and parking issues. So, Madam Mayor, I'd like to give this to the CEO for him to go through.
Councillor Broderick has moved, yes, we'll do the vote, move that the petition be received and referred to the CEO. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Burns. Thank you, Councillor Burns. I'll now put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Councillor Broderick, if you'd like to present that to the CEO.
Yes.
Thank you. And now your second petition, Councillor.
Can I have a minute to speak to that one?
Well, you kind of spoke before, but if you'd like to, yes, you may have an extra 30 seconds.
Just to put it into perspective for you, the biggest one for this is both traffic and the impact that it will have on our small town centre and the character of the area. But I also want to just point out that this particular petitioner has gone about this in the right way. She's pretty much done my job for me in educating most of the community on the difference between code and impact accessible. As she spoke to everybody, she explained the difference, which was great. Also understood that it was code, knowing that you are allowed to put an education facility in this space, but if we are going to do that, could we please have it with these conditions? So she's gone about this petition in a incredibly professional manner, and it's just impressive to see that throughout the community. So, and she garnered most of those signatures within a couple of hours over a couple of days, which is really impressive. So thank you.
Thank you. I gave you some discretion there. We've already voted, so now we'll move on to the next petition.
Appreciate that, thank you. This one has also been given to me. It says, Dear Mayor, CEO and councillors, please accept this email as the formal submission of the change.org petition titled Regulation of Long-Term and Unsafe On-Street Caravan Street Parking of Caravans, Campervans and Motorhomes, and they've attached everybody that's signed. The petition has garnered the significant support of 1,107 concerned residents and community members across the Sunshine Coast. I'd also just like to note that in a lot of these names, we've also noted that it's to Brisbane as well. There are some people in here. As detailed in the petition, our residential streets are increasingly impacted by the long-term and often unsafe parking of large recreational vehicles. This practice leads to several critical problems for residents, including a significant reduction in available on-street parking for residents and their visitors, dangerous obstruction of sightlines at intersections and driveways, posing a risk to drivers, the blocking of footpaths, nature strips impeding accessibility, and council maintenance. The signatories of this petition respectfully call on the Sunshine Coast Council to address these safety and amenity issues by taking the following actions. review and amend local laws, establish clear time limits, strengthen enforcement of parking regulations and prohibit unsafe parking practices. We trust that Council will give this petition and the considerable community voice it represents the serious consideration it deserves. So that has come through from Mr B. Mills from Landsborough, which is why I'm delivering it today from Division 1, but noting that it covers right across the Greater Sunshine Coast as well.
Thank you, Councillor Broderick. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Natoli, thank you. Councillor Broderick, did you wish to speak to the petition now?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I think this one speaks for itself in that we have talked about this a lot. This is one that I'm presenting to the CEO and hoping that he can take it forward from here and let us know where to from here.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Okay. Councillors Broderick, Landsberg, Natoli, Dixon. Sorry. In favour of allowing the petition to be given to the CEO. In favour. Broderick, Landsberg, Natoli, Johnston, Dixon, Hungerford, Suarez, Law, Mayor Natoli. Those against, Councillors Burns and Bunnag. Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Natoli, I believe you have a petition to present.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll read the petition. We, the undersigned, respectfully petition the Sunshine Coast Regional Council to not allow those areas in Mooloolaba to the west of Douglas Street and south of Marjorie Street, currently designated as low-density residential, to be rezoned as medium-density residential, as proposed under the Sunshine Coast Proposed Planning Scheme 2025. We believe medium-density zoning, which will allow the construction of 4-storey apartment buildings in this area, will destroy the community and family character of Mooloolaba, cause massive traffic congestion in and surrounding areas, in particular Mooloolaba State School, destroy the green canopy of this area, which is home to a wide variety of bird life. The lead petitioner is Peter Twyford-Jones from 4 Brentwood Avenue. There's 141 signatures on this petition. He's also, with this petition, Madam Mayor, came a letter that is actually a submission to the Sunshine Coast Proposed Planning Scheme. I don't know if he's made a separate petition or whether it's been formally submitted, but I'd like to submit both the petition and
We'll just submit the petition because the submission has been submitted to the consultation process, the statutory process. So if that's been submitted, then we'll stick to the petition at this process. Okay, so Councillor Natoli has moved that the petition be received. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Hungerford. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Natoli, did you wish to speak to the petition for 1 minute?
No, I think it just reflects, again, the concerns of certain residents in my division. So I'll allow the planning scheme process to take its place and we can deal with this when it comes to council formally.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, I will now put the motion to the vote to accept the petition. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. And the motion is carried. Sorry about that. I couldn't quite see your hand, Councillor Burns. I wasn't sure there. Yes, that would be helpful. And thank you, Councillor Natoli. Okay, we are about to move into confidential session now. So, councillors, before we do that, do any of you wish to declare any personal interests in relation to the item to be discussed? It is relation to item 11.1 and 11.2. The Chief Executive Officer advises these reports contain confidential information relating to negotiations relating to the taking of land by the local government under the Acquisition of Land Act 1967 and negotiations relating to a commercial matter involving the local government for which a public discussion would be likely to prejudice the interests of the local government. For this reason, it is recommended that Council close the meeting under Section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012 to consider and discuss the information in these reports. Noting, of course, that Council's decisions on this item will be made during open session, which will be viewable by the public. Councillors, is someone prepared to move that we close the meeting to discuss agenda items 11.1 and 11.2? Thank you, Councillor Dixon, and seconded Councillor Landsberg. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. We will close the meeting. For those of you online, we will pause the live stream until we return after the confidential session. Okay, welcome back. The live stream has resumed, so thank you if you are joining us online. And we are now at the consideration of item 11.1. Councillors, I note that Councillor Natoli was prepared to move this item and Councillor Dixon to second the item. Thank you to you both. To the councillor that moved it, Councillor Natoli, would you like to speak to the motion?
Madam Mayor, just to say that this is an incredibly important project, important for our future in terms of dealing with the growth, and so I totally support and hope that the councillors will get right behind this project as well.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to the motion? No. Councillor, you're happy to not close? Great, thank you. Okay, I will now put the motion to the vote. All of those in favour? Okay, we have Councillors Broderick, Landsberg, Burns, Natoli, Johnston, Dixon, Hungerford, Bunnag, Suarez and Mayor Natoli in favour. Those against? Councillor Law. The motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move now on to item 11.2. And councillors, I note that Councillor Natoli was prepared to move this item and Councillor Hungerford to second this item. Thank you both. Councillor Natoli, would you like to speak to this motion? No. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of the motion? And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Okay, councillors, we have no further items on today's agenda. I note the next ordinary meeting will be held on Thursday, the 16th of October at 9 a.m. So I will now declare this meeting closed at 1:14. Thank you so much, and we will see you shortly.